Hey guys, how's it going? It's Nate Savage here, and Sweetwater just sent me this awesome pedal board full of boutique overdrive pedals that they used in their epic video with Rob Scallon on creating the world's largest pedal board. If you haven't seen that video, check out the link in the description below. Anyway, this board actually got me thinking, man, I have made a lot of mistakes with guitar effects and pedal boards over the years. So I wanted to share with you my 8 biggest mistakes that I made with effects and pedal boards. That way you can avoid them when you're chasing your absolutely perfect tone for your guitar. And if you want to win one of these pedals, just wait to the end of the video, I'll show you how to do that. Also, Sweetwater is giving away some pedal boards too, and if you want your chance to win one of those, stick around. So if you're just getting started with electric guitar or pedals, they're not as intimidating as you think. The big key here is to remember that there are really no rules, and experimenting with pedals is the way to get good sounds out of your gear. Speaking of gear, the amp I'm playing through, just so you know what you're listening to, is just a PV Classic 30 mic'd up with SM57 and a Royer over there. And I'll be going through my humble little pedal board here for all the sounds. Okay, the first mistake that I made with my effects pedals, and I did this mostly because the touring situation I was in, I had just a backpack in my guitar, so I couldn't carry a pedal board. But the biggest mistake that I regret over the years is using a daisy chain and a power supply like this. There's nothing wrong with these if you're just at home running 2 or 3 pedals, but as soon as you go out on the road or start adding more pedals, the biggest problem with these is they are going to introduce noise to your signal at some point. So that's gonna really kind of degrade your sound a little bit, and they're not the most reliable things in the world. I probably own 3 or 4 of these. I'm not even sure if this one works anymore, when like the best solution would have been for me to get a really good isolated power supply like this one spot that I've had for years. It's probably about the same price as buying 3 or 4 of these, and it's gonna sound a lot better. Another thing you might want to do as far as power is concerned, just throw a couple of 9-volt batteries in your bag. They're always a good backup. Number 2, using too much cable in between your pedals or using poor quality cables. Those are all things that might contribute to noise or a bad signal and just kind of suck the life out of your tone. I have 3 pedals here, all powered with this daisy chain and way too much cable in between. There's a 100-foot cable right here. That's just ridiculous. But listen to this. That's my clean sound. It's already noisy. When I kick this on, super noisy. And this guitar has humbuckers on it. It sounds great when you're playing, but as soon as you kick that off, or have some kind of quiet time where you're not playing, it starts to sound pretty bad. And I know we can't all go out there and buy the most expensive cables, but get what you can, do the best you can, and try to keep things neat and tidy. It's a lot less chance that things will go wrong and sound noisy for your board. Number 3, general pedal order, and this is by no means a rule, but it is kind of a nice place to start, and this is really the general consensus for everybody kind of in the online community for setting pedals up. But it really doesn't mean anything. The main thing here is you have to experiment with what you want and the sound you want with your own gear. A really good rule of thumb here is what I call DDR. It's Dance Dance Revolution. I'm just kidding. It's drives, delay, reverb. And that's like the most basic one. If you can remember that, that's a good starting point. Put your drives first, so overdrives, distortions, delays, and then reverbs at the end. Now, I use the reverb on my amp most of the time just because I like that, but I have an amp right here with no reverb. So when I do have reverb, I usually put it at the tail end of things. And if you have more pedals, different types of pedals, a little bit more detailed order would be like wahs and volumes or tuners at the beginning. Then you have a compressor maybe before your drives, and then any kind of time-based effects like chorus, delay, reverb. And a lot of people put phasers and flangers like at the beginning before drives, so that's something you may want to experiment with too. But the important thing is that you find out how your gear works, and we'll get to this more later, but find out what specifically you like in your gear and what order things sound best for you and for what kind of music you're playing. This one is near and dear to my heart because, well, I'll show you in just a second. Number 4 is stacking order, or the mistake I made was not experimenting with the stacking order of drive pedals. It's a really cool way to get a lot of different sounds out of the gear that you have. And like, I have these 10 pedals here that are just awesome, nice boutique pedals. And you may not like the way one sounds running into another. Let's say you're coming in to this pedal, into this one, and you have both of them on, and you just don't like the way they sound. Well, one thing you might want to experiment with is putting them in a different order to get a completely different sound. And a really good example of that is these 2 pedals right here, this TS-808 and this OCD, this is a new one, my old one, had been on my pedal board for probably 15 years, these two pedals, and they're like my go-to bread and butter. And if you swap them, if you put the OCD first, they sound completely different than they would if they were like the way I prefer to have them set up. So let me just give you a sound, a taste of what they sound like. So here's the Tube Screamer on its own. And if I wanted to stack the OCD with it just to give it another level of gain, it's a really cool way to get some nice sounds. And the cool thing about that is you get to get creative with it and experiment for yourself. And that's why I'm sitting on the floor for this video. This is where guitar players sit when they're figuring out their pedals and effects, because you're gonna have stuff all over the place, plugging things in, unplugging things, experimenting to get the best order for your pedals and different sounds by stacking them or putting the order a little bit different. Number 5, not fully experimenting with the pedals that you have. Oftentimes, like if I'm trying out, let's say, a new pedal from this board, I may plug it into an amp and be like, you know what, I don't like this pedal, I'm just gonna dismiss it. When I could really be missing out on something, because it could be the pedal to unlock some kind of magical tone for a song or just my sound in general, and not experimenting fully with what you have is really an opportunity to miss out, because some pedals sound great into the clean channel of an amp. Some pedals sound great into the drive channel of an amp. Some pedals sound great with humbuckers. Some pedals sound great with single coils, but not experimenting with your pedals and seeing what they can really do in a lot of different contexts is you're kind of ripping yourself off when you do that, especially when you lay down money for a nice pedal. But I'm just gonna throw on this OCD pedal right here, and I'm gonna show you what it sounds like with humbuckers and then with single coils too. So 2 very different sounds. You may like that with humbuckers and maybe a little bit too bright or shrill if you split it into a single coil or if you use like a Strat or something like that. But experimenting with that and finding what combinations of things work really well together is a big part of growing your tone with guitar effects. Mistake number 6 that I made for a long time, and I thought I was just bad at using delay pedals. I thought I sucked at it, but it wasn't the case. This mistake was running loads of gain through a delay pedal into the front of an amp. It just sounded muddy and garbled to me, and I could never figure out why. But the reason, and you aren't gonna have necessarily the same opinion here as far as your taste and tone, but I liked delay and reverb a lot better if I was using pedals through the effects loop of the guitar amp, especially if I was using a lot of distortion directly from the amp, or if I was using a lot like stacking gain pedals through the front of the amp. Let me let you hear what the difference sounds like between running the delay through the front of the amp with a lot of gain and then running the delay in the effects loop with a lot of gain. So here's the gain channel of the amp with the delay run right into the front of the amp. It's really washy, really quick, and let me change this over to where it's the clean channel of the amp with drive pedals going into the delay and then into the front of the amp. So to me that sounds a little less washy already. I did not change the delay settings at all. Let's see what the effects loop sounds like. So I have one cable right here. I'm gonna put it into the send of the effects loop, and that's sending signal, so it's going to go to the input of whatever the first pedal on my line that I'm putting in the effects loop, which is my delay, and then it goes into reverb, and then it goes out. The output comes back around here to the return, and that's how you use an effects loop. So all of my time-based effects, like reverb and delay right here that I have going, are going post all the other pedals and all the EQs and preamp section here. So I'm coming into my volume pedal with a just guitar cable, then I come through my drive pedals, and the drive pedal output, my last one, goes to the input of the amp. And that's the setup I'm running with right now. Here's what a lot of delay sounds like with an overdrive and OCD through the front of the amp. That's probably my favorite way to do this. The delay just is not as obnoxious and clangy. Let me show you what this sounds like when I use the drive on that amp. So there are like 4 different ways, if you have an effects loop on your amp, that you can experiment with different sounds. I thought those sounded all pretty drastically different. It took me a long time to decide how I like to run this stuff, just because I didn't know about effects loops or the best way to run time effects like delay. So that's a great example of using way too many effects and too much gain on an amp setting. It's so loud, it comes through the amp too. So tip number 7 is don't use too much effects, or just don't overdo them. I have a lot of reverb, a lot of delay, a lot of gain on here. And like the overall tone wasn't bad, but it's just really garbled. So maybe go for more moderate settings. I'm turning my delay down there. I'm gonna use a little bit less gain here. And I'm gonna go turn the reverb on my amp down just a second. Okay, I didn't change anything as far as EQ, I just turned everything down a little bit as far as intensity with the effects and overdrives. And it's the same tonal characteristics and everything, but it's a lot more decipherable, a lot clearer. Probably the biggest offenders from experience as far as putting too much of something into a guitar sound are delay, number 1, and then number 2 to me would be gain. Like using the littlest amount of gain as possible on your tones is a really good way to keep them clean and clear. And just using enough delay that's appropriate for whatever type of music you're playing is a good kind of rule of thumb to go by. The last one, and the biggest one that I've been guilty of for such a long time, is depending on your pedals to make you a better player. If you go out and buy new pedals, they're gonna be fun, they're gonna be entertaining, but they will not make you a good player. And I am living proof of that. The only thing that makes you a better player is spending time with your instruments, setting goals, and working toward them. So those are just some of my guidelines and some of the mistakes that I've made over the years to help you whip your pedal board into shape and start to learn how to use guitar effects a little bit better. And just remember this, there is no magic rule that says, you know, how you have to use your pedals, but experimentation is probably the biggest key to getting the sound that you want out of your guitar. All right, now the part that you've all been waiting for. Sweetwater, as I mentioned, sent us this board full of awesome drive pedals that they used in that Rob Scallon video with the world's largest pedal board. And we're giving 3 of these away. All you have to do to enter to win is comment on this video what is the biggest mistake you've ever made with a guitar effects pedal, or the biggest mistake you've ever seen someone else make. We'll be choosing 3 winners at random on September 4th, 2019 at 12 p.m. Pacific, so be ready for that. We'll ship it to you. You may have to pay a little bit of duty on it, but it won't be much depending on what country you live in. Also, if you want to enter to win an awesome pedal board from Sweetwater, all you have to do is check out the link in the description for this video, follow it, enter for your chance to win. Thanks so much to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video, and remember, even if you only have like 2 or 3 pedals, experiment with them as much as you can with the gear you have to find your own unique voice with the gear you have.